Andrea, can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
Great. We've got a few people who have started rolling in already, but we are all set up for whenever you want to begin. So I know that Nelsie is going to be kind of pitching off this thing in a few minutes. So until that time, I think we're ready.
Perfect. And I think the official start time is 5:30, correct?
That's right.
Okay. The presentation for me to share.
Yep.
So then I would just share my screen.
Yep. I'm going to right now try and make you a co-host. So
Okay.
bear with me a moment.
Perfect. I'm getting rid of this background. It's distracting.
It's only letting me completely change the host to you.
Oh, okay.
Rather than keep me as a co-host. So let me see if I can.
Well, I guess as long as I'm not muted.
Yeah, and honestly, I already made it available for you to share. So you should be okay.
Okay, so let me try. So share screen.
Yep, it's coming.
Perfect. So what do you see? Do you see?
I see you select a window or an application that you can share, and then it's got your PowerPoint presentation down below. There it is.
Okay, so it's big enough and everyone can see it?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so then at 5:30, I'll do just a very brief introduction, and I will kind of introduce the flow of the meeting and go from there.
Perfect. Perfect.
And are we recording? I know that
we will be. I'm not recording yet because I figured no one really needs to hear you and I talking right now.
That is.
But so give it just a few minutes and I'll start it right at 5:30.
Okay, perfect. I just had someone request the recording because they weren't able to make it. So.
Oh, sure. Yep. What will happen is I've got it so it's going to my cloud. Okay. And so once it fully downloads to the cloud, I'll get a link and I will forward that over to you.
Perfect. I just.
There it all is. Don't give too much away.
I just want to make sure that I can.
I know.
So I have it. I don't have it in PowerPoint. I have it as a PDF. So I just wanted to make sure that I knew how to go from one page to the next.
No worries. PDF seems to work really well. So and when Kat comes to our board, that's usually what she uses as well.
Okay.
And about how many folks do we have signed up tonight?
We have close to 40.
Awesome.
And some have like multiple RSVPs, so maybe even higher than that.
Good. So just keep in mind, whatever you're pulling up now is showing up.
Okay, so I'm going to
just so you know. So don't pull up, your kid's birthday party invite or anything like that. And unless you want everybody on the east side to show up, I mean.
Come on over.
Come on over.
Let's see, how do I get my PDF back up? So you don't see it right now?
I see your, there it is. Okay. Now you want to just maximize, there you go. There you go. You're perfect. You're perfect.
I just wanted to go back and look at the agenda, but then it goofed everything up. I thought that would only share this document. I didn't realize it was showing.
Oh no. When you share your screen, you share everything on your screen.
Okay. Well, because it gave me a couple of options. It said either pick your screen or pick a document. But
but once you pick, you can share whatever you're doing.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yep, yep, yep. So I started talking to my board about ordering those shirts.
Oh, fun.
Yes, yes, yes. So we'll talk about that very briefly on Thursday.
Okay. Look forward to it.
Rachel texted me about an hour ago. She's like, "Oh my gosh, send me the link. I forgot to register."
Oh, no.
I'm like, "Oops."
That happens. Yeah,
Yeah.
we had a couple that trickled in today, so
Oh, good.
that was good.
Fantastic. I'm just hoping that my cat stays asleep.
Oh, it doesn't want to come to visit.
Oh, she always does. She's the star of every Zoom, whether I like it or not.
Yeah, you are not the first person to say that. I know Lori Sieber always has
Oh,
her
yes,
cat
I've seen Lori's cat.
loves to come over the keyboard.
Exactly, exactly.
So,
Well, it's warm, so she thinks that that's a really good place to lay.
oh, I bet.
Yeah.
That's a smart cat.
Well, let's not go too far. Let's not give her too much credit.
Fair.
Uh, so I tried to save the settings on the breakout rooms to do the timer, and it wouldn't save. So it may be I have to be in it to do it. So we'll see what happens. If not, we just do a message to everyone saying, "Come on back."
Okay. Perfect. I'm just glad that it's so easy to do.
Oh my gosh, it was so easy. I wish I would have known this last year when we were planning our annual meeting, because holy smokes, we could have done lots of fun stuff. But oh well.
Live and learn.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all of this stuff a year ago was so new.
Yes, it was.
I mean, it probably had been around, but we just hadn't been using it.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with it so far.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi,
I'm Rick Carter with LHB.
Rick. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Great. We're gonna start probably about 10 minutes or so. So I'm gonna mute you for now, or if you'd like to mute yourself, and then we'd like to keep that Zen quality throughout the whole series. Elsie, since you're first up, I'm going to ask you to unmute. We're going to probably start about 7, 8 minutes just to give a few more people time to come in.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
How many people are in so far? I think I only see people that are presenters.
I have 20.
Oh, great.
Hey, Lisa. Excuse me.
How are ya?
Good. How are you?
Great, great. We're going to be probably starting in about 5 minutes or so, just to give a few more people time to come in.
Yep. No
All
worries.
right.
I'll mute.
Thank you. I don't know about all of you, but I have like 17 different alarms telling me that I'm supposed to be here right now. So everything's ringing right now. So, but we're going to give it probably another 4 or 5 minutes for everyone to jump on.
Hello.
Hi, Monty.
Okay, I didn't hear anybody talking, and I didn't know if it was because nobody was talking.
This is the Hillcrest Zen workshop. So we'll be all
Wonderful.
quiet and Zenish. But you're one of the first ones up, so I want to make sure that you were unmuted.
Yes, I appreciate that.
And if you haven't, Monty, I sent you a text with just a quick update. Well, not an update. I just wanted to make sure you got some information.
Okay, I've got 2 kids inside with grandma and grandpa, so I apologize in advance if they come outside.
That's what that lovely mute button's about.
I got it.
So, Andrea and Nelsie, did you want to get started?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Andrea Novak, and I'm with the St. Paul Port Authority. And I just want to thank everyone for being here this evening. We really wanted to take the opportunity to share the work that we've been doing on the development side and provide the opportunity to kind of decipher between the master planning process, which the city has been working diligently on, and how that kind of transitions and overlaps with the development plan that the Port Authority is working on, and making sure that people know where
This
the
meeting
future
is being recorded.
opportunities are to get involved and stay engaged. And with that, we are really excited to be able to welcome Councilmember Nelson Yang.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to our second Hillcrest Continuing Community Conversations event. I'm thrilled and super grateful to all of you for spending a couple of your hours tonight here to collectively craft our work together in the Hillcrest development. Just a bit about me. Again, I'm Nelsie Yang. My gender pronouns are she and her, and I'm the council member representing Ward 6, which is where the Hillcrest Golf Course is in. I also have my legislative aide, Chris Strong, here as well. So if any of you contact our office, you may often connect with him, or Jenna, our executive assistant. I've been serving as a council member for 1.5 years now. It's been the most joyful thing that I've done in my life to be representing our East Side community and advancing toward racial, social, and gender justice as well in our communities. And I do this work in joy, and I know that I want to name that sometimes it isn't always easy and joyful, because there are a lot of hardships along the way. And I'm sure that today has been a very emotional and hard day for you all. As you know, it marks the one year since George Floyd was murdered by a police officer, Derek Chauvin. And if to our communities of color, especially our Black community, it's been a very traumatic and a hard day. And I wanted to really make space for us to honor and remember George Floyd, and to remember that we each play a role in building toward a future in which Black lives matter, and in which no members of our community have to experience police brutality, and in which we build a future where people across race, class, and gender can live dignified lives. So I'd like to invite you all to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you so much. I truly believe that there is so much value to healing in public, and I know that there is a lot of healing to be done. And I encourage all of you to find ways in which you explore what it means for you, whether it is through art, crafts, or through policy work, being engaged in your community. Those are all the ways, and there are so many more in which we can continue crafting toward a world in which all people can live dignified lives. And I feel like the work that we are doing here today in collectively crafting what the Hillcrest Golf Course would look like is a snippet of what that can be. And I really value every single person here making time to be in this collective space. And wanted to really express gratitude to District Council 2 for really leading conversation here and crafting what these community engagements will look like, along with the St. Paul Port Authority and also our staff in the city of St. Paul as well, and the Ward 6 office. And so I really feel these conversations are indicative of the ways in which we have been hearing all of you tell us we need to be doing more to engage folks, especially since this is a very long-term project. And so having people be at the center of decision making is super crucial to us. So I wanted to really celebrate folks for being here, and that there are so many more opportunities for everyone to get involved. I hope that you continue staying involved and inviting other people to be a part of these in the near future as well. So I'm going to pass things back to folks at the port so that they can continue our slideshow and conversation here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councilmember. Can everybody hear me okay? Hi, folks. My name is Monty Hillman. I'm with the St. Paul Port Authority. Catherine and myself are leading the Hillcrest effort on behalf of the port. I've been at the port for 16 years. For 5 years before that, I worked doing community organizing and community development work in the North End and Frogmont neighborhoods. So working for and with district councils and community development corporations, I have a special affinity for this type of work and bring that passion to the Port Authority every day. I will acknowledge I sit here in front of you as a white privileged middle class liberal elite. I'll just put it on the table. And I have spent, since the 1990s, working on the East Side, Frogtown, North End neighborhoods, and continue to be personally and professionally passionate about social justice work. And so everything we can do to learn from and with you and create with you solutions that better our community, that's what we're here to really engage in discussion about. The mission of the St. Paul Port Authority you see on the screen there. The St. Paul Port Authority's mission is to create quality job opportunities, expand the tax base, and advance sustainable development. The port is a subdivision of the state of Minnesota. We are a local government, separate from the city, but very closely related. We're a small agency by local government standards, city standards. We're 18 people. We've got about a $5 million annual operating budget, kind of small fries. We've been around since the 1920s, so about 100 years. Originally created to manage river commerce and river shipping, a very environmentally efficient and beneficial way to transport large amounts of commodities, keeping them out of trucks and off of our highways and city streets. In the 1960s, the port began doing urban redevelopment work inland and across St. Paul as urban renewal as a concept was sweeping the country. In the 1990s, we came into the modern brownfield era, where there were federal and state legislative changes, financial tools made available to allow these brownfields, which Hillcrest is a brownfield. It's contaminated with mercury from years of fungicide use, herbicide use. But really in the 1990s, we finally figured out a way to clean up and transact these properties without having them remain mothballed, just deteriorating hulks in the middle of our cities for years and years. The state of Minnesota and the port really helped create these models in the early 90s. And both the state, the city of St. Paul and the port have been nationally recognized as pioneers for turning around these contaminated sites. In the 90s, we all began the long work of building the Phelan Boulevard and revitalizing the Phelan Corridor, which at the time was contaminated former railroad property filled with train cars full of tires and rotting telephone books and something much different than it is today. So how we got involved at Hillcrest is really related to our public-private expertise in turning around distressed properties. Hillcrest has some pretty massive land development challenges. There's a substantial amount of contamination. It lacks infrastructure. There's a massive amount of topography, as I'm sure as you know, and there are wetlands that accompany the site that some of which need to be mitigated, some of which are contaminated and need to be cleaned up, some of which might have to be mitigated and moved on site. There are huge opportunities at Hillcrest that have public sector benefits. That's where we do some of our best work. In the metro, we have a massive housing supply-demand imbalance. Folks in the housing marketplace will tell you the market needs to generate about 10 to 12,000 housing units a year in the metro to keep up with demand. And as a marketplace, we're only generating 2,000 or 3,000 units a year. That's been going on for several years. And so it's creating this housing crisis across all price points, all affordability levels. We feel like Hillcrest can have an impact in helping rectify that. There is an opportunity to repair a job imbalance, I should say, related to decades of disinvestment. When we first were introduced to the site a couple of years ago, we were touring with Chuck Repke, and one of the first things Chuck informed us about was the fact there's 23,000 residents in District 2 and only about 3,000 jobs. So the neighborhood is a net exporter. People have to commute to go find work. We think local jobs for local residents is a way we can help rectify that. We also know from our work in sustainable and equitable development, the city's goals, the neighborhood's goals, that there's a huge drive to make this an equitable and regenerative development. And you're going to hear some cool stuff tonight, about some of those ideas and have a chance to provide us some feedback and discussion about them. And we believe we can get the site back into the marketplace in a timely fashion and get it producing jobs and tax base and amenities and green space that everyone can enjoy. I guess I forgot to start with the agenda. I'm going to really quickly wrap up this Port 101 piece. And we've got successive about 7-minute chunks. 101, project economics and equity, a glimpse into the arts and employment district concept we've recently discovered, housing, prioritizing jobs, sustainability measures, future engagement opportunities. We want to get through that as quick as possible and be done talking at you, so then we can go into breakout groups and do discussion. So we're going to hold all questions and discussion until we get through getting the information on the table. This is one of the first chances the port has had to really reach into our perspective on the development side, not necessarily the planning side, and lay this out for you. And then in breakout groups, we can have some great discussion. So where was I here? Master plan versus development plan. So there's been some confusion about the timing of the master plan. The master plan process has been going through community engagement and meetings since October of 2019. That's when the mayor appointed community advisory committee started meeting. There have been numerous amount of meetings, both technical meetings with staff trying to figure out what is physically possible, community meetings with that community advisory committee, which has a wide range of perspectives, with 3 rounds of community engagement that the city has led through the master planning effort. That isn't ending. What we're introducing here to you today is the next stage of community engagement. So the master plan timeline right now calls for the city and the community advisory committee, for the city to receive from the community advisory committee a recommended master plan in August. I could see that slipping till September, but I know folks are trying to keep it online for August. And then it's just the start of an approval process, which includes planning commission, it ends with city council, includes public hearings. So the master plan will follow that course, and the community advisory committee recommendation late this summer, early this fall, and then through the winter, more approval, public hearings, et cetera, looking at a February 2022 master plan approval. The master plan, you should remember, is about broad land uses and broad goals, some strategies to reach those goals. But the development plan, which is what we're responsible for, needs to align with that master plan. But the development plan is really what brings the master plan to life. It includes the parts of the project that people will see, experience, touch, and feel on a daily basis. That's where the really cool stuff happens. No offense to our planning friends, absolutely. But this is what actually gets built in the physical form, and you'll have plenty of opportunity to provide input on what gets built in its physical form. How you will be able to provide that input is what we're going to talk about throughout the evening here. So we will, moving forward, we'll be developing some smaller work groups that are topical. So if you're concerned about housing, there will be a work group, a subgroup for you to continue to engage in for a while. We're going to be out here for 10 years. So we will be talking to community about what these projects are, what they look like, how they function. For us, the functionality of these buildings, what's going on inside of them, whether it be an economic activity like jobs, whether it be a community activity like gathering, whether it be a housing activity like having safe and affordable housing. The functionality of these spaces is what really brings this thing to life. And as much as we all care about the aesthetics, and you're going to see some cool aesthetic stuff tonight, it's really the functionality that gets us excited, because that's what changes people's lives. So subgroups around housing, jobs, urban design and public art, sustainability, and parks, trails, and open space. So there will be a topical way for you to get engaged on the things you care about the most. If you care about all those things, you could join all those groups. The more voices, the better this process is going to be. So what we hope to create with the community, the Port Authority views itself as able to do its work in community because we have a social license to do so. We only operate because the constituents that support us through their tax dollars, the elected officials that support us with various approvals, that social license is not something we take lightly. And so our projects need to reflect your reality and your desire and your hopes and dreams. We're not a private sector profit motivated developer. We have a public mission, a public purpose, a public board with public hearings. Our returns are not measured in ROI or rate of return. They're measured by the public goods that we can deliver to a community through a project like this. The purpose of the Port Authority is to improve people's quality of life by building vibrant economic communities. And for us, that means an ability to bring joy to a community. When there are affordable housing choices, when there are secure and attainable job opportunities, when there are amenities that neighbors can enjoy, we believe that can spread joy through our community. And that's what gets us excited to do this work every day. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Catherine, to talk about project economics and equity.
Good evening. Yeah, my name is Catherine Sarnicki. I'm Senior Vice President of Development at the Port Authority. And I get to talk about economics, which is the unexciting parts. And then I get to talk a little bit about some of our equity goals, which is much more exciting to me. But first of all, I want to sort of clear up sort of the parameters that we're working with. We've heard from a lot of folks, why can't it be a park, right? This has been green space in the community for nearly 100 years, and why can't it remain a park? What we've found out is it takes a lot of money to maintain park space and to maintain it in a way that makes it enjoyable for people to use. In coming up with, how we were going to develop this project, we went to the city of St. Paul and said, we're willing to carve out 20 acres of this development for park space. And the Parks Department told us, we don't have the money to program it. We don't have the money to maintain it. Why don't instead we carve out 5 acres of active park space, and Port Authority, you donate $2.5 million to get that park space programmed and activated. And then we'll have 15 acres of passive open space as well on the site that can be used and maintained either by the Port Authority or by the tenants on the site. We can talk more about that. Some of the other goals we have for the site, we have talked about 1,000 jobs and 1,000 housing units. And it's important to know what the basis of that was. Back in 2019, when we acquired the site and we're trying to figure out what this site wanted to be when it grew up, we hired a firm, Maxfield Consulting, to do a market study and tell us what the market could handle and what the market was looking for. And what they came back with, probably no surprise to folks, is that there's a huge housing demand. I think Monty mentioned that, and we can touch on that later. All types of housing, there's a shortage. Houses don't stay on the market for more than days right now, right? And 1,000 jobs. We also found out that there is a need for light industrial, that's some light manufacturing, some light warehousing, potentially some restaurant or food prep organizations as well. But we're not talking about industry with smokestacks or big permitting emitters or that. Those have a different place in the city and they're not within this community. So we talked a little bit about the Port Authority being committed to 20 acres of open space on the site. And perhaps Councilmember Yang can talk about this more in the Q&A, but we've heard that the reservoir, the water reservoir that's adjacent to the Hillcrest site will likely be a partnership with the city to be used for parkland, whether that's community gardens or play areas. I don't think that information has yet to be determined, but certainly Councilmember Yang has been working hard to get more green space in this community, and we're excited that that could potentially be tied into Hillcrest as well. You've heard about the wetlands on site, and you probably have seen low-lying areas across the site. One of the requirements of the watershed district that we live in here is that there's no net loss of wetlands within the watershed district, and there are no surplus of wetlands created in the city of St. Paul. What we are committed to doing is for any wetlands that need to be impacted for development, they will be replaced one-to-one on site, and then there'll be some additional wetlands created off-site outside the area to help offset and create additional wetlands as well. What we are trying to do, the two plans that the city of St. Paul have proposed, we've asked our engineers and scientists to try and maximize the amount of wetlands that can remain. And so both of the plans shown by the city had sort of rough diagrams of circles, and they've gotten down to the nitty gritty and say we can at least save half of the wetlands where they are in their existing location, and some of the others based on where the roads may need to come in to match up with roads across the street from Ignite and things like that, may need to be shifted. But we have some good ideas of where hydrologically those are good things, and we're having discussions with the wetland permitting folks, both at the watershed and the city and state level. Okay, Andrea, can you go to the next slide? Now I get to talk about the exciting stuff. Thank you. We are really glad that we can be public sector land developers. That's a pretty unique base to be in. And it means that we can require some things of the partners that we do projects with. One of those is workforce agreements. And historically, we have sold land for $1 and required businesses to provide jobs, living wage jobs. Currently, we're looking at, I think it's $14.75 an hour with benefits, or without benefits, we're requiring, I think it's $17 an hour.
17, yeah.
Okay, thanks. So we're looking at revamping those agreements. We're talking with different HR directors. We're talking with the Eastside Employment Exchange. We want to work to revamp those and explore how we can make those even better than what we've done in the past, and look forward to input from the community as well as all kinds of partners that are involved in workforce. We are really excited about infrastructure and renewable energy workforce development and local recruiting. We have a proposal already on the table to develop a solar installer training certification, such that folks can get certified and then work on this site to install solar. So we're trying to figure out some logistics around that, but we're really excited about some of those opportunities as well, to do some workforce development, especially that complements our goals on the site for lots of energy production. Solar, we're talking about on site. We also want to look at affordable home ownership options. We've heard it's really important to create community wealth in the neighborhood. And so we expect there to be a mix of housing types and rental types. But we've heard affordability is really key in this area, and we want to make sure we can make a difference there. The Port Authority has a vendor diversity initiative that we started in 2019, maybe even just before that, just before we purchased the Hillcrest site. And we are really trying hard to employ minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, and hire local St. Paul businesses for the work that's happening out at St. Paul. And there is a program called Just 2.0 that we've asked some of the big engineering and architecture firms that are working with us to pilot with us. And it is a scorecard similar to a report card that you see. If you know the LEAD program, it's a little bit similar, but it looks at different measures about equity in the organization. And sort of the first step is having policies in place that work to address potential inequities. And then the second step is to take those further and further. So the example I referenced previously was, one of the items is having a policy in place that your top earners, your CEO, your CFO, don't make more than X times amount the lowest employee. And having a policy in place that talks about that, you get 1 point. If that's less than 50, you get 2 points. If it's less than 25 times, you get 3 points. And those aren't the right numbers, but that's the concept. So we're looking at how to change using the money that we're spending on Hillcrest to try and drive some social justice and equity issues. And so we'd love to hear more from you guys about ways to do that as well. We don't think we have it done, but we're doing our best, and we'd love to know more. And so then I get to do the really exciting part, which is introduce Bruce Cornwall. One of the things that we've heard listening in on the city's land use planning is, industrial buildings even the ones that you guys, the Port Authority, say are really cool in your business centers, I don't want to live next to that, or I don't want to live near that. And so our consultants have been hearing that as well. And we've got some very smart and inventive people on our team. So I will introduce you to Bruce Cornwall, who's got us thinking in a new way about what some of the industrial properties could look like out there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kat. So as Kat said, my name is Bruce Cornwall. I'm an architect with LHB Architects and Engineers. And as Kat said, we've been working along with the port to help develop some kind of alternative ways of looking at this. We've been working very closely with Tiffany Navarto, who's our landscape architect. She's been doing actually a lot of the heavy lifting, figuring out how all this could work. But obviously a big part of this is how to put down on this hilly site these buildings, which are really the key job providers for the area that Kat mentioned. So what you see on the screen in front of you is a pretty typical approach. In the lower left-hand corner is pretty a low-end kind of version of these light industrial buildings, which is what a lot of these job providers are looking at. They want to keep these costs as minimal as possible. In the upper right is what might be considered a high-end version of a light industrial warehouse, and this is an actual Port Authority project at the Midway. And it is very nice, but as Kat mentioned, it's not really the type of building that you'd still like to take a Sunday stroll alongside. And typically in the upper left and the upper right, this is kind of what you typically get, even with the covenants that are put forth for these job providers to create a better building than just the plain box that you see in the lower left-hand corner. So in looking at this, next slide, please. Tiffany and I actually were starting to look upon how can we do this in a different approach? What really would make this different? And we thought we might start by expanding the project goals. And the three in the triangle, the blue, green, and orange, are really the basic goals about which the Hillcrest development was started on. You can read those: environmental stewardship, livability, and of course, financial viability. And Tiffany and I, along with Stacy Demmer, who's an architect I work with very closely, started to think, what if we added the idea of curated art? What if we put something into this that really made it more about the street experience rather than putting it into the architecture, if you will? So if you look on the left-hand side, very briefly, when we start with financial viability, what we're talking about in this case is taking these buildings, which again, the job providers want as simple as possible buildings so they can put the investment in the people and the equipment. And we're saying, why don't we redirect some of the investment that is typically required into the structure of the building and actually reinvest that into the site community-oriented amenities. In other words, take the point of view of the person walking in the street or on the sidewalks first, and what it is as you're riding your bike, taking a walk with your family, whatever, through there. So the second thing is environmental stewardship, and we would make sure that these were accommodated by extensive stormwater and infiltration strategies, biofiltration, that would be partly enhanced by some of this money that we would be redirecting into that. In other words, we'd be adding more greenness to this as well, as opposed to the big expanse of parking. Next would be energy, where we would reserve the right, if you will, to put as much solar photovoltaics as we can on the roofs. And there's a lot of flat roofs here. You'll hear a little bit later about the advantage of what this can do for the energy production at the site. And even take the surfaces of the buildings and use the ability to capture solar gain from self-facing building experiences. So then the third is livability, and this is where it really starts to get interesting, is where we would then create a layered, textured, human-scaled streetscape. Now, typically you start at the building and you work your way out to the street with the design. In this case, we're suggesting we start with the streetscape and work our way back towards the building. So you can see, again, we're trying to say, when you're walking on the street against this building, how does that feel? Not how does it feel right against the building? So, and lastly, to make this something that is really rich and is very different, would be to actually introduce public murals and light public art, sculpture into the streetscape to really give that layer of community-focused art. And that would be a very important piece of this, is that we would expect that the community, you folks, would actually be selecting what that theme might be. You can imagine the deep history that's in the east side over the past 100 and some years, and the current history and the future history, as we like to talk about it, as it's being developed. So, you know, it's been a very active, rich cultural experience on the east side for the entire time of St. Paul. So the process here is to really change everything around and not make it about the architecture, but make it primarily about the streetscape. So how do we do that? So next slide. So really, this is, there would be three basic strategies, but as we mentioned earlier, Tiffany put together this slide really relating to about this landscape integration, where with a redirected investment, we can kind of upgrade, if you will, the green infrastructure, and where we need to have retaining walls and berms and storm retention, stormwater treatment, that we can layer it with lots of extra green space and green strategies to really make this, again, this layered development of green space and more interesting textural experiences. Secondly, as I mentioned, next slide, we would then also, when that pops up, the solar energy integration that I mentioned, and you can see here just some images of what it might look on the roof. And you can see on the lower left a very creative use of introducing solar panels into a very interesting and active, fun wall that I think would be very attractive. And then, of course, in the lower right, even the potential of adding some over the parking to really maximize our solar exposure. Third strategy, next, is really this introduction of public art, as I mentioned. One of the reasons we like the idea of murals is it's really a time-honored and successful way of introducing art into the environment. So I like to mention, if you Google public art in Ashland, Wisconsin, you'll come up with their strategy actually as a tourist attraction to build and to introduce murals throughout the city. And then if you go the other end to an international city such as Barcelona, they've done the same thing. So you can see at both ends of the spectrum, from a small town, a major international city, they've used public art to activate the streetscape and use it in very creative ways. And of course, the bottom line the bottom pictures show the introduction of fun sculpture, kinetic sculpture, movement, lots of fun, put smiles on our face, come back with this idea of how do we introduce joy into this experience in addition to jobs, is really the kind of the driving force. So if you look at the next slide, which is really an image of what this could look, if you could go back one. Right, thank you. This is kind of what a different approach would look like. Advance one more. It's jumping around. Right, there you go. So this is an advance of what we'd have: a very simple building layered with the green landscape, the streetscape, as we mentioned. You can see it's a rich kind of treatment of what is a typical sea of asphalt, introducing public art, including the public art onto the buildings. So you can see how this would work in such a nice way of introducing a completely different way of looking at what a light industrial park could be. And the last slide shows that view, not from a bird, but from the street. One more. There you go. And so you can see here from the folks on the street, you can see that layering. If you start at the street here, you've got landscape, you've got the greenscape, and then you've got sculpture. And then you have a little bit of parking. Then there's developed more greenscape in the middle, and that's part of the stormwater retention and best treatment practices. Go a little bit further, you have more green space, and then finally you have the building with the solar panels, and you can see how art would be integrated into buildings. You can imagine it in the community themed way that you have controlled, it's curated, it's very high quality, and it creates, again, a very, very different experience that we believe will actually be something you'll want to walk through the site. And in another meeting, Tiffany would talk about all the different access ways through the site that will be maintained to make sure it's a pedestrian friendly site. So later on, I'd love to entertain questions more about this and take your ideas. So thank you.
All right, you're back with me again, Catherine Sarnicki with the Port Authority. We were unable to have somebody with the City of St. Paul talk about housing. There will be a housing component to the master plan. Right now, there is a draft housing plan that they've asked for comment on, and they are working on revising that. So I'm going to give you a few highlights of what we know. There'll be a mix of townhome, row home, low density with some higher density up to a maximum of 6-story multifamily. That doesn't mean it'll be all one or all the other. It just means that's the zoning range of what we're looking at for the site. We think there'll be approximately 1,000 units per our market study. And like I said, the city has the draft housing policy and you can reach out to them on the master plan and more about that. But a few things we want to make sure that the community knows that we've heard is that there is a need for deeply long-term affordable housing out here. And there is a need for affordable ownership options. And we've also heard the need for multi-generational housing with 3+ bedrooms. One thing that the most recent round of outreach from the City of St. Paul on their 2 master plan concepts brought out was an opinion divide between sort of the high density having more housing versus low density, and folks in the existing neighborhood wanting to keep, the small neighborhood feel versus the folks that really feel the need for housing that's out there. And so there is this sort of push and pull dynamic that's going on out there. And one thing that we've heard in conversations come up time and time again is this question around tax increment financing for affordable housing. And there are different kinds of TIF, which cannot be used at this site, but tax increment financing is an opportunity for affordable housing at this site, and is going to be explored for that. So join the conversation. We do have a breakout group on housing, and we need more information of what you guys are looking to see out here as the development progresses. The master plan will have these broad boxes of residential, light, medium, high density, and we'll go from there and try to turn them into something amazing. So with that, I believe I get to turn it over to Rick to talk. Oh no, back to Monty to talk about jobs. Sorry, Monty, I didn't mean to skip our jobs.
Yes, we love talking about jobs at the Port Authority, Cat.
That's right.
So just to level set with some information, some data points on how the port has performed in terms of job creation, job retention for the city of St. Paul, and some specific east side data that I think folks will be interested in. So the Port Authority has developed 17 of these light industrial business centers around the city of St. Paul. They currently house actually over 550 companies, over 25,000 jobs, contributing $12 million annually in property taxes. The number that's not on here is the average wage of the hourly workers in those business centers across this geography is about $27 an hour. So these are definitely living wage jobs, many of which have low barriers to entry. And we have heard some questions and some confusion and some commentary. Well, why are you guys pushing so hard for light industrial and jobs? While the unemployment rate as one measure of a need for jobs in a city is a factor, you oftentimes need to slice that by different demographics, by different geographies in order to see what reality is. In 2019, when unemployment was only 4.2%, pre-COVID obviously, 32.6, basically 33% of East Side households still made less than $35,000 a year. This is data from Minnesota Compass, research arm of the Wilder Foundation. We talked about the fact that there are 20-some thousand residents in District 2 and only 3,000 jobs. We have said in the past, others have said in the past, that the best housing program is a good jobs program. And we do believe that our work is best done when we bring living wage jobs with low barriers to entry that are appropriate and attainable by local residents. Rachel Speck, excuse me, not Rachel, someone from Goodwill Easter Sales, one of our other partners, is going to, Jim is going to talk in a moment here about our partnership with local workforce service providers. You know, there is a myth or maybe some misinformation out there that maybe these business centers aren't full. The Port Authority business centers around the city of St. Paul are generally bustling full, very little if any vacancies. Industrial assets across the spectrum, even during COVID, performed incredibly well. Other than multifamily housing, industrial has been the best performing real estate, because we still, even though we're buying stuff online, someone still has to make it, and people have to go to that place to make those things. And it still has to be produced and assembled and distributed to show up at your front door. These properties do stabilize and protect property values. They are well maintained. The folks that tend to build them, owner users, business owners, have spent millions of dollars on these facilities. And so they want to, and we enforce that they keep them well maintained. And we do believe that the industrial zoning that's being suggested in the master plan at Hillcrest will result in living wage jobs with low barriers to entry, which we believe does advance the city's equity goals. Next slide here. So you heard the word workforce agreement a few times here. Well, these workforce agreements are generally what we require of a private company when they get a land incentive. They get subsidized land. Most of our transactions are land for $1 with these requirements. These requirements were developed about 30 years ago. Job density minimum 1 job per 1,000 square foot, 50,000 square foot building, 50 full-time employees. Our minimum is 1 per 1,000. We're currently averaging 1.7 per 1,000. Local wage minimums, you'll see for this geography, for the east side, the average is more $23, $24 an hour. There is a local hiring requirement with a local hiring goal in each of these workforce agreements. And after 30 years, we are realizing that there are new ways of doing this work. We're listening to folks about new ways of doing this work, and that's what we want to talk to you some more about. So next slide. So the new workforce agreement model that is just in its infancy, we've stood up some tent poles, and we've been socializing those tent poles with various parties that work in workforce development, in philanthropy, nonprofit community development, et cetera. Right now, our current workforce agreements don't acknowledge or try to intentionally attract or recruit or protect or incentivize companies that have formal diversity inclusion efforts. Right now, we require that these companies sit down with us and let us tell them how to build a sustainable building. I don't know why we can't sit down and require the HR directors work with us to make sure they are trained and properly informed about how to support a diverse workforce, things like that. Local hiring, we do believe local hiring is definitely a piece of the workforce agreement model moving forward. We probably need to look at it a little differently than we have historically because we want to do better. And you'll see some real numbers here in a second. Wealth creation. We want to attract and reward companies that have wealth creation strategies in place for their employees. This could be companies that do profit sharing, that provide housing down payment assistance, tuition reimbursement, co-op ownership opportunities, any number of wealth creation strategies. These are things that weren't contemplated 30 years ago, frankly. We have a very blunt instrument, and we want to turn it into a scalpel to further our collective social justice goals. And we need to do some work around the granular definition of quality jobs. And in our perspective, this is really about how attainable are the jobs to the local workforce. We will be meeting throughout the summer here. Actually, I think we're going to be starting the early fall to meet with the HR directors, the philanthropics, the nonprofit partners in the neighborhood who have workforce service development organizations that are the link of local residents to our job centers. And we will flush this out fully and intend to have this in place by the time we are ready to start selling land at Hillcrest. And so if you're interested in talking more about workforce agreement and jobs, there will be a breakout for that in a moment. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Jim Dirtle from Goodwill Easter Seals who is going to talk a little bit about our partnership with the Eastside Employment Exchange.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Monty. Again, my name's Jim Dirtle, and I'm the Director of Employment Services at Goodwill Easter Seals. And I'm glad tonight to represent one of 12 members of our employment collaborative, the Eastside Exchange. And we really came together as a group looking at that we need to do our work differently together. And so the goal of the exchange is to achieve economic opportunity by connecting residents and employers. And so we work on access to jobs for residents, and that's supporting them in training, awareness of jobs available, all sorts of supports for readiness to apply and to support them while they're in their jobs. And then we also provide, in our partnership with employers, the feedback loop on the hiring process and outreach and connecting with community on jobs. For many employers, they don't know who's not coming in the door. So it's really, we provide that bridge between residents and employers to really help them meet their goals and the workforce development agreements as part of the Port Authority. And I've been working in this field for a long time, and it's not uncommon for a resident to not be aware of an opportunity in their own neighborhood, or as we all heard, employers who can't fill vacancies. So our work is helping to close that gap between the two. And recently we did a survey with 500 residents, and the overwhelming majority want to work close to home. So that's part of our focus as well, is helping people work in their own community. And so we're excited to be part of this conversation and in partnership with the Port Authority to help attract these great jobs to our community. So thanks so much for having the exchange be part of this presentation tonight.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you for your partnership and the work you do in helping connect residents to the businesses in our business centers. There's a lot of data on this slide. I'm not even going to try to explain it all. I'm just going to hit a few high points because this is real data. This has just been compiled. This is 2020 workforce reporting data from companies. You'll recognize the names on the left that are on the east side of St. Paul. Almost all of them except for one are in Beacon Bluff Business Center. 10 years ago, we told the folks in District 4 and District 5 that we would bring 1,000 jobs to the Beacon Bluff area. And today we can report we have done that. Right now, in terms of workforce reporting, there are 8 companies listed here. There are a few companies down below. They're in a little different category because those were market rate transactions in the lower left corner. We still count their numbers, but we don't get quite the enforcement since they bought their land. But there are 8 companies that are currently reporting these workforce agreements, over 1,200 employees. 347 of them are currently St. Paul residents. 161 of them are currently Eastside residents. 29% about St. Paul, 13% about Eastside. In a workforce agreement structure, they get a 2-for-1 credit towards their local hiring goal if they hire from the immediate zip codes. You see the zip codes listed at the top. So meaning, per the workforce agreements, we're really hitting 42% local hiring, given the math we do. And that our average hourly wage is about 23 bucks an hour. So this is a snapshot in time of 2020. You can imagine these workforce agreements roll for 10 years or more. So in 2019 and 2018, this current Eastside residents number was a different number. It was 120 or 200 or 180. But it probably wasn't necessarily the same 161 people over 10 years. So it's quite reasonable to conclude that literally hundreds of Eastside residents have had living wage job opportunities in these businesses over the course of time. We continue to improve, desire to improve upon our local hiring goals, and we're working hard to do so and looking for your help in doing so. So with that, I will turn it over to Rick Carter at LHB to talk about sustainability and a carbon-free community.
Thanks, Monty. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, so I've got 4 slides. I'm going to go through this pretty quick. I've been watching the chat, and Lisa's done an amazing job of kind of fending off to the small groups, but I think I will hit on some of the questions that people asked about sustainability as I go through this. So I'm going to talk about two things primarily. One is, I think Monty mentioned it, we're pursuing Lead for Communities, which is a new program for the site. And as a subset of that, we're taking a very aggressive approach to reducing carbon to the degree that we're talking about having a potentially carbon-free site or carbon neutral site. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit too. So Lead for Communities is like LEED for a building. You might have heard of LEED certified buildings. We've been doing those for about 25 years now. LEED for Communities is a brand new program that's set up exactly for this kind of scenario, where in this case, we've got 112 acres with 1,000 units of housing and 1,000 jobs. It is a very broad-based program. I'm not going to go through all the rectangles or the squares on here, but you can see it addresses poverty and equity and water and the life on land has to do with trees and wildlife. So it's a very broad-based approach to communities that is developed for any community in the world. But how it relates to this site, we're going to dig in a little deeper. If someone could flip to the next slide for me. When we do a LEED project, and again, whether it's a building or a campus or a city, because there's LEED for cities, or in this case, a community, we start with a checklist. And you can see some of those same categories. We have natural systems, transportation, land use, water, energy, et cetera. And we've spent, and by we, I'm just representing a group of some very smart people, including Asa Postner with SIG and Becky Alexander with LHB, who have done most of the work behind the information I'm presenting. Becky's on maternity leave. Asa's not here, but I can take questions and do the best I can and get answers for you if we don't have them tonight. So one of the things that's similar to other LEED programs is you can get up to about 120 points, and you have to always get to 40 to be certified, 50 for silver, 60 for gold, 80 for platinum. So platinum is the highest level. What's unique about this program, and only one other program, it's for speculative office buildings, has this feature within the US Green Building Council's LEED program, and that is that you can be pre-certified. And that means what you do, and it's not a light touch, you have to do some very rigorous work and research and present something to the USGBC that we have done that says this is our intention. Our intention in each one of these categories, in each one of these credits, to do the math to come up with the number of points we think that we can realistically get. And that's what you're seeing in front of you. So if you look at the very end, you'll see under the column that's mostly green, 88 points. That's what we submitted to the US Green Building Council for LEED for communities. And if that is basically agreed to by the US Green Building Council, this project will be pre-certified at a platinum level. We're not positive, but we don't think there are others that have been pre-certified at that level yet in the United States. If there are, they're very few. So it would be a real attraction to bring in developers. And more than anything, we talk about this, Monty and I talk about this whenever there's a project, even a building scale project. Having a system like this provides you with a common language, whether you're talking to the community, to developers, to the financial world. It also gives us a set of goals and a way of measuring whether we can reach them. So in a minute, I'm going to flip slides and we're going to focus in on the energy and greenhouse gas emissions. Again, one thing that's unique about the LEED for Communities program is, as opposed to all of the other programs for LEED, that section is about energy consumption. How much energy is being consumed by the building? You get a certain amount of points for consuming less energy. In LEED for Communities, it's carbon emissions. So it's measured on the number of tons per year per person in any site that are emitted. And I said to the group on Saturday when we were out in the park, it was my first live meeting in about 1 year and 2 months. The last one was with Monty and our team and Kat and their team, and we talked about what it might mean to be carbon neutral. And I'll get into the details on this slide again in a minute. I told Monty we'd done some precedent studies a number of years ago. There have been a lot of conversations about carbon-free or net zero communities. We did some more research. There are literally hundreds of communities talking about this, but as far as we can tell, it's not happened yet in the world. So I told Monty, I said, good news and bad news. Bad news, it has never happened. No one's done it yet. Good news, you could be the first, or we could be the first. So it's been a very exciting process. We have a lot of very smart people in the room. Somebody asked about district energy. We have Evergreen Consulting, Evergreen Energy Consulting, who are the consulting arm of the district energy downtown. We've got Excel Energy. We have IPS Solar. And basically what we've done, and by we, I mean mostly Becky and the team, is to do some math, and the last slide I'll have will show some data on some slides, but to figure out what would happen just in terms of if we just followed code, which is typically what happens. The code will get better over time. The grid gets cleaner over time. Transportation is going to get very incrementally better. What does that look like? And by the way, we are talking about transportation emissions as well, not just building emissions. Business as usual is going to be better because the port has, and we've worked together with the port for 20 years now on having a sustainability section in the covenants that the building owners are held to. They're held to doing a system like LEED. They're held to doing some very sophisticated energy modeling, tracking their energy and water over time. In addition, the code gets better, the grid gets a little greener. So business as usual is actually quite a bit better. But the last three, and I'm not going to go into them in much detail, are kind of the various scenarios we're looking at. Somebody asked about geothermal or district energy. We're looking at essentially an all-electric solution, so maximizing electricity and transportation, electrification, minimizing gas in the use of heating and cooking in buildings, and going with some sort of a below-ground geothermal system, whether it's building by building or a bundled system or a deep aquifer system. So if you're nerdy enough to want to learn more about that, come to the section on sustainability after this. And I'll do one more slide. This just shows graphically, so the baseline is code. We know, because we've done a lot of research, that the average emissions in tons per capita per year in a city like St. Paul, and in fact in St. Paul, is somewhere around 9 or 10 tons. And that's the prerequisite to be able to even qualify to do LEED for communities. You get up to 19 points by getting as close as you can to zero. The business as usual is, as I mentioned, a lot better than the baseline, just simply based on the port demanding and the state users doing better buildings, a cleaner grid, et cetera. Bundle 1 and 2 are variations on this system of having primarily an all-electric site with very green buildings, like LEED certified buildings or passive house buildings, if you're familiar with that. And to the point that we've talked about all kinds of strategies, including somebody mentioned in the chat, the idea that if someone lives on the site, they work on the site. Perfect scenario. You know, we eliminate the transportation. Doesn't even matter if it's electrified. Somewhat kiddingly, I told Monty, you may have to have an electric car in every garage of every unit that gets sold. So those are the kinds of things that we've crunched the numbers on and come up with what we think is realistically close to a carbon neutral site. I think I'll stop there. I'm sure I left some things out, but come join me in the sustainability section after. Back to you, Monty. I think. Or Lisa?
Lisa.
I think it's me. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm the Executive Director of the Greater East Side District 2 Community Council. We're really excited about this partnership that we've created with the Port and with Councilmember Yang's office, because we see the need to do even more engagement than we started with. We really want to hear from our neighbors, especially those of you who are immediately impacted by the sites, the ones who live across the street from the current golf course and the few blocks away. We really want to hear what your thoughts are, find some solutions to those sticky points, and make this a opportunity for us all to benefit from. So one of the things that we're going to be doing, and you have the slide with the breakout groups that'll be coming up in just a few moments, but we will be having listening sessions, conversations, focus groups, whatever you want to call them, starting June 22nd at Hayden Heights Playground. And to sign up for those, you can do that from the Greater East Side's website at greatereastsidesp.org. It is listed at the top of the chat. Feel free to sign up for any of the nights that you'd like to attend. A couple of those are going to be specific language-based nights. So we're going to have one that's specifically for our Hmong speakers, one specifically for our Spanish speakers. But all are welcome to attend any and all of these. They're going to be singular topic and solution based. So it's going to be a really exciting time. They'll all be held outside, bless you, Monty, at Hayden Heights Rec Center, which we are really trying to raise some awareness of the needs of that center, especially in the light of Hillcrest coming in. I also did want to say quickly, if any of you have a monthly block club or neighborhood organization that you would like us to come speak at, please give us a shout either through my email address, d2lisa@outlook.com, or through the Greater East Side website, and we would be happy to come out and talk with you and listen to you and see, like I say, if we can find some solutions to those sticking points. So with that, if that's okay with everyone, I'm going to open up the breakout rooms. We have one for housing, one for industry and jobs, one for urban design and public art, one for sustainability, and then our favorite catch-all for general questions. So if you have questions on any and all of those topics, feel free to go in. You can even bounce from room to room. The way that you will get in is there will be a little box at the bottom of your screen that will light up and say, join breakout rooms. So, and you just click that and you can go from there. So it looks like we are at 6:36. I'm going to open up the rooms for about 50 minutes to give everybody lots of time to chat and make sure that you are heard and that we know where to go from here. And then I'll also set up a countdown to let you know that we're 2 minutes away from pulling everyone back into general session. So with that, I'm going to open up all the rooms, and if you need any help, just stay on here and I can help get you through.
One more note, if you want to bounce between rooms, they'll be at the bottom corner of your screen, there'll be a little thing that says leave room, and then you'll have the option to either leave the room or leave the meeting. If you leave the meeting, you say goodbye to all of us. If you leave the room, you can come back and then pick another group, or you bounce back and forth from the main room, but you should be able to go straight from group to group.
Lisa, do you have to kind of approve us and send us to that room? Is that what's going on?
No, you can just go, if you click the bottom of your screen where it says more or breakout rooms, you should be able to go right there.
I'm clicking on industry and jobs and it's not letting me in.
Well, Monty, I'm gonna assign you to industry and jobs and then you can bounce right in there.
Boom, thank you.
You're welcome.
Lisa, can you assign me to general, please?
Yes, Rachel, I will gladly assign you to general.
Yes, and Lisa, can you assign me to housing? I'm not seeing any options to go to breakouts. Thank you.
No problem. I'm sorry, Tiffany, where are you going?
Housing.
Housing. Thank you.
Hi, Lisa. This is Regina Flanagan, and I'd like to go to urban design and public art. I don't seem able to get in there.
Okay, I will send you right over.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jan Leadham, and I'd like to get into housing, but I see it open and I click on housing and nothing seems to happen. What am I
Okay,
doing?
let me assign you. I think that will help.
I just found you need to click on the number to the right of the.
Oh.
And then it says join. I didn't see that either.
Ah,
Thank you.
There we go.
And you know, from the host perspective, I have a little different screen than you guys, so I appreciate the help.
Where are you?
Thanks for hosting. We're off to sustainability.
Awesome. Is there anyone who would like to be assigned to a committee?
This is Jean. Can you hear me? Jean Jansen.
Hi, Jean.
Sure. Can you assign me to general questions?
Jean, you kind of went out there. Which one did you want to?
General questions.
General questions. Okay, thank you, there.
Hi, this is Linda Wainio. Can I get into general questions, please?
I would be happy to put you there.
Thank you.
Hi, Jenny. Are you just coming in?
No, I was in another room and I was
Oh,
just
okay.
checking to see what was left. Looks like there's only 2 housing and industry left.
Oh, no, I mean, you can go to any of them if you'd like.
Okay. I'm just gonna see what they're talking about.
Okay. Did you want to,
Thank you.
do you want me to assign you to housing so you can get in there?
No, I can't. No, I don't want to go to housing. I want to go to sustainability.
Oh,
I
okay.
got it. Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
No problem.